The story of Jupiter and Cocknose is a colourful chapter in the Aboriginal resistance against white settlers in Victoria's Western districts. Jupiter, Cocknose, and other resistance leaders spearheaded a relentless guerrilla campaign in the 1840s, defying British incursions into their lands. Their legacies, painted with bold strokes of courage and sacrifice, underscore a profound narrative of resistance rooted in a deep connection to their ancestral lands and an unwavering spirit against colonial oppression. In the 1840s, organised groups of the Daward Warung clan of Aboriginal people put up a strong resistance against the colonists along the western districts of southwest Victoria, in what came to be known as the Umarala Wars. The region around the Umarala River between Port Fairy and Portland was the focal point of this resistance. The names of two Aboriginal leaders stand prominent among those freedom fighters, Jupiter and Cocknose. These were the names given to them by the colonists. Taikuhe was the indigenous name for Cocknose, and Tara was the indigenous name for Jupiter. In his 1884 book Old Melbourne Memories, Rolf Boulderwood provides insight into the curious names given to two Aboriginal men, Jupiter and Cocknose. According to Boulderwood, Jupiter was regarded as a chief of the tribe associated with the rocks and the surrounding area of the extinct volcano. Cocknose, on the other hand, received his name from early settlers, who noted the distinctive shape of his nose. Boulderwood describes him, through the lens of colonial attitudes, as a restless, malevolent savage, reflecting the biases and perspectives of the time. Before we delve into the stories of Jupiter and Cocknose, let us first examine the factors that shaped their lives and transformed them, along with other freedom fighters, into the figures they became. The Aboriginal people of Victoria initially did not see the white settlers as enemies. William Buckley, a white man who lived among the Aboriginal people for 32 years, revealed in his memoirs, as recorded by John Morgan, that the Aboriginal people believed the white men were reincarnations of their deceased ancestors. This belief was widely held among Aboriginal tribes until the harsh realities of colonization began to emerge. However, these misconceptions were short-lived. Edward Henty, the first white settler in Portland in 1834, quickly shattered any hopes of peaceful coexistence by setting his dogs on the Aboriginal people who came to observe. Francis Henty, also known as Frank Henty, was the second member of the Henty family to settle at Portland Bay. In August 1837, Frank Henty established the Merino Downs property. That same year, Portland witnessed its first violent incident when one of Henty's shepherds was killed by a member of the local Aboriginal community. Meanwhile, figures like Dermot, the headman of the Boonwurrung tribe in Melbourne, chose to support the settlers, often to the detriment of his own people. The whalers of the Portland Bay District, from the moment they arrived in the region, engaged in the abduction of Aboriginal women to satisfy their sexual desires. However, the initial conflicts between the two civilizations in Portland arose over the rights to the carcasses of whales that washed ashore. In 1838, Henty's overseer, Thomas Connell, who had a hut overlooking the Wonnanglenelg Junction, poisoned a batch of flour with arsenic and watched as dozens of Aboriginal people suffered in agony. At least 3 men, 4 women, and a child died as a result of this horrific act. Considering the scale of atrocities committed by the white settlers against the Aboriginal population, the hostilities faced by the settlers in return could be seen as minimal in comparison. An article titled Trials of the Pioneers by J.B. Cooper was originally published in the Argus and later republished by the Portland Guardian on March 2, 1933. A particularly interesting excerpt from the article reads, 82 settlers petitioned Governor Gipps on July 21, 1838, to declare a black war, or to permit them to form a militia. The governor responded that Aboriginal people were subjects of Her Majesty, and that there must be no discriminatory retaliation. From the perspective of the Aboriginal people, taking sheep without permission, sheep that grazed on their ancestral hunting grounds, was not considered wrong. To them, the sheep were simply another readily available food source, much like the native animals they had hunted for generations. The same perspective applied to agricultural produce as well. Tracking and arresting suspected murderers among the Aboriginal population proved extremely challenging due to tribal hostility. When Aboriginal suspects were apprehended, they were transported in custody from Portland Bay to Melbourne via Launceston. In Melbourne, they were brought before Judge John Walpole Willis, the city's first resident judge. Judge Willis consistently refused to try Aboriginal defendants, arguing that individuals from the Stone Age lacked the capacity to comprehend the nature of the legal proceedings against them. The Fighting Hills Massacre, which occurred on March 8, 1840, stands as a tragic chapter in the history of Victoria. On that day, squatters killed 51 Aboriginal people near Wando Vale in an area known as the Hammocks. The violence was triggered the previous day when Aboriginal people took 50 sheep from the White Brothers' flock at the Conongwutong Run near Hamilton. In retaliation, a party of 7, including the 4 White brothers, James, William, George, and Pringle, and 3 convict employees, Benjamin Wardle, Daniel Turner, and William Gillespie, tracked down the group and slaughtered 51 of them. About a month later, in April 1840, nearly 60 Aboriginal people, including many elderly men, women, and children, were shot dead while camping near Waterholes. This massacre, linked to the White Brothers station hands, took place near the present-day Conongwutong Reservoir, then known as Den Hills Creek, close to modern-day Coleraine in Victoria. This tragic event later became known as the Fighting Waterholes Massacre. The convict background of many early settlers was a significant factor contributing to the atrocities committed in the region. One such shocking incident occurred on February 23, 1842, which even horrified some white settlers. A group of 6 or more Europeans shot and killed 3 Aboriginal women and a male child, while wounding another woman, who had been sleeping in the tea tree scrub near the station of Smith and Osprey in the Portland Bay district. In response, Governor George Gipps offered a reward of £100 to anyone, except the perpetrators, who provided information leading to the conviction of those responsible. For informers who were prisoners of the Crown, an application would be made to Her Majesty for a free pardon and return to England. The laws of the time treated Indigenous people as less than human, imposing harsh and disproportionate punishments for even the most minor offences. This historical context highlights the deep resentment that developed among the Aboriginal population toward the white settlers. With this background in mind, let us now return to the story of Jupiter and Cocknose. In the 1840s, the Dalward Warrung and Jab Warrung clans around the Umarala River employed guerrilla warfare tactics against the settlers, using the Mount Rouse Reserve as their base. They carried out acts of economic sabotage by driving off sheep and cattle, breaking their legs, and leaving them to die, effectively undermining the settlers' livelihoods. In early 1842, several incidents escalated the conflict, with the Aboriginal fighters attacking and killing 4 Europeans, wounding 2, and driving off 4,000 sheep. The ringleaders of these operations were Jupiter, Cocknose, Bumbletoe, Jackie, and the Doctor, names given by settlers, as their original Aboriginal names were considered difficult to pronounce and remember. In December 1840, Aitchison French, the police magistrate at the Grange, modern-day Hamilton, issued warrants for the arrest of these ringleaders. As the attacks intensified, the Native Police Corps, led by Henry Edmund Pulteney Dana, were dispatched annually to the Portland Bay district and stationed there for several months, following the directives of Charles La Trobe, the superintendent of the Port Phillip district of New South Wales. In February 1842, William Dallas Bernard, a squatter on the Moyne River, petitioned Foster Fyans, the Commissioner of Crown Lands for the Portland Bay district, for protection against Aboriginal attacks. In response, Fyans requested assistance from Charles La Trobe, who ordered a detachment of Fyans Border Police to be deployed to the area. On April 14, 1842, Jupiter and Jackie were captured near Umarala Station by Foster Fyans and his Border Police. Jackie managed to escape, but later succumbed to gunshot wounds. 2 days after Jupiter's capture, Fyans and his team arrested Cocknose and the Doctor. The doctor earned his nickname for his skill in extracting kidney fat from deceased enemies, a practice associated with traditional customs. David Khyber close describes the incident in his book Buckley, Batman and Mindit Echoes of the Victorian Cultural Clash Frontier as follows. A sergeant known as Old Tom asked if he could shoot Cocknose, but Fyans said, "No, he is too good a man." Although Cocknose stunned Fyans' horse with a blow to its nostrils using his lingal, he was eventually captured. Cocknose and Jupiter were subsequently committed to stand trial in Melbourne on charges of threatening life and destroying property. The duo was transported to Melbourne via Launceston. On April 18, 1842, the doctor succumbed to gunshot wounds. However, on July 11, 1842, the court discharged Jupiter and Cocknose, citing a lack of witnesses to testify against them. Following their release from prison, their resistance activities against the white settlers intensified. On August 7, 1842, a group of 20 Aboriginal fighters led by Jupiter drove off 1,000 sheep, although the settlers quickly recovered the flock. 3 days later, on August 10, 150 Aboriginal fighters, again led by Jupiter and Cocknose, attacked shepherds at Umarala. On August 18, Jupiter and Cocknose led another raid, driving away 1,014 sheep. The station owner's party followed a trail of sheep carcasses to rocky outcrops where they confronted Jupiter's group. A skirmish ensued, resulting in 3 Aboriginal fighters killed and several wounded. Despite the settlers' efforts, only 503 sheep were recovered from the raid. The Aboriginal ringleaders waged a form of economic warfare against the settlers by crippling their livestock. They deliberately broke the legs of sheep they couldn't consume, rendering them useless to the settlers. The Launceston Courier reported the following on Monday, September 19, 1842. The blacks have been committing serious depredations at Port Fairy. On the 7th instant, they attacked Mr. Hunter's shepherds and drove off a flock of sheep. A few days later, the same shepherds were attacked by 150 blacks, but, being well armed, they managed to drive back the assailants. Not long afterwards, they were attacked again and forced to flee. The blacks then drove off 1,000 sheep. They were pursued and overtaken, leading to a sharp skirmish that ended in the defeat of the savages, who fled to the scrub, leaving 3 of their number dead on the field and several others seriously wounded. The flock of sheep was found to have been reduced to half its original number, even though it had only been in their possession for a few hours. The stations of Mr. Ritchie and Mr. Campbell have also been attacked. The ringleaders in these depredations are 2 Aborigines named Cocknose and Jupiter, who were recently discharged from the Melbourne jail. To curb the ongoing attacks, the Native Police Corps arrived in the Umarala district on September 12, 1842. Their operations against Aboriginal resistance continued for several years. By 1846, the Native Police had intensified their efforts to track down Jupiter and Cocknose. In September of that year, they conducted operations at Yambuk in search of Cocknose camp. During this effort, they captured 3 Aboriginal women, hoping their capture would lead to Cocknose apprehension. The conflicting accounts surrounding the deaths of Cocknose and Jupiter reflect the complexities of historical narratives during frontier conflicts. Annie Maria Baxter, a pioneer settler, recorded in her diary that Cocknose was captured by the police. Rolf Boulderwood, on the other hand, writes that Jupiter and Cocknose were shot by the Native Police Corps in the Stony Rises. According to him, 8 Native police were involved, including Backup, Tall Boy, and Yiptun. Jupiter was shot by Tall Boy. The Umarala War is thus savagely ended. According to Boulderwood's description and local legend, the site of the shooting is a place now known as Waterloo Swamp. His narrative also suggests that the punitive action deterred further cattle theft, as no incidents were reported thereafter. This blend of personal recollections, local legend, and settler perspectives highlights both the brutality of frontier clashes and the enduring ambiguities of historical events. The outcome of the Umarala War was inevitable, as firearms vastly outmatched spears. By 1847, the Gunditjmara uprising had been effectively crushed, with the victors holding an overwhelming advantage, not only on the battlefield, but also in controlling the narrative. After all, history is invariably written by the winners.